All right, friends, so today we are starting our third day from Lizard Week, but because we are missing a week from the weeks that I sent you books, I also was going to do a read aloud of the bear book because we've read this one twice now, but the bear book you guys have at home, and I know there's some words in here that might get a little tricky, so I'm going to read aloud from bears, even though we're going to be talking about lizards today and doing our lizard painting tomorrow for our rocks, okay? So we're going to start off today with our bear book if you have it, if you want to grab it. I know this was a little surprise one because you only had 3 weeks with myself and we had 4 books to read through. So this is actually a new author this time by Elizabeth Carney. And this is a level 3 book. So we know it's a little bit higher of vocabulary. Some of the words might be a little bit more challenging. So that's why I wanted to make sure I read it aloud. So if ever you want to do a playback of what some of the words are, you certainly will have this video on YouTube. I'm going to start on page 4. Meet the bears. Do you think you know all about bears? You might have a teddy bear or two. You might see bears on TV, in movies, or at a zoo. But there are some things about bears that might surprise you. 8 species of bear roam the world today. They are found on 4 continents, but each species looks and acts a little different from the others. Let's meet the bears. And here's a den note. So because we're gonna kind of condense this into one day, I'm gonna read the definitions today. Species, a group of closely related plants, animals, or other living things. My puppies are playing, so if you hear that, that's what they're doing. What kind of bear do you picture when you think about bears? Maybe you think about polar bears. These snowy white bears live in the freezing Arctic. They are the biggest bears in the world. You can see this caption here. This is a polar bear in Svalbard, Norway. Beautiful. You might think of giant pandas, the black and white bears that live in China. They munch on bamboo all day. Maybe you think about black bears or brown bears. These 2 species are common in many places in North America. Some people can look out their window and see a black bear in their yard. Brown bears can be found in forests of Asia, Europe, and North America. They're the most wide-ranging bears in the world. And here's a weird and true fact. It says bears are faster than they look. A black bear can sprint 35 miles an hour for short distances. Humans can't go that fast. I'm gonna see if I can move my puppies so they're not so loud. Hold on. Come here. Come. Okay. Page 8. You might not be familiar with other kinds of bears. The Asiatic black bears are also called moon bears. They have markings on their chest that looks like a crescent moon. Sloth bears have shaggy black hair. They look like they just rolled out of bed. They mainly live in India. Sun bears are the smallest bears. They grow no heavier than a Great Dane dog. These bears are found in tropical forests of Southeast Asia. The Andean bears have rings of white or golden fur around their eyes. That's why they're sometimes called spectacled bears. Spectacles is another word for glasses. They are the only bears native to South America. And here's a weird but true fact. Andean bears have only 13 pairs of ribs, 1 pair less than other bears. Interesting. The spectacled bear. Bears of the world. The world's 8 bear species live in certain places around the globe. check out the ranges of the world's bears. The range, the region where the animals of a particular species live. So you can see where we are up here in North America, we're towards the American black bear, and that's pretty much around where we live. Depending upon which continent you live, you can see there's no bears in certain continents, which is very interesting. We learned that our lizards live on all 6 continents except Antarctica. So bears live on even less, and they're mammals, which is very, very interesting. A bear's claws can grow as long as a whiteboard eraser. So here's my eraser. Can you imagine seeing a claw this long, fingernails this long? Super, super dangerous. Very, very sharp. Big appetites. Have you ever heard someone say, "I'm as hungry as a bear"? That person must have been pretty hungry, because bears can eat a lot. Many types of bears eat anything they can find. Brown bears, black bears, and moon bears are omnivores. They eat grass, insects, fish, berries, garbage, you name it. Polar bears live in an icy environment where few plants grow, so they mainly eat meat such as seals and walruses. But like brown and black bears, a hungry polar bear will eat anything it can find. So you can see this is a picture of grizzly bears in Alaska catching fish. And here we have polar bears dragging a seal onto the ice to eat it. And we know from every week that an omnivore means they eat both plants and meat, okay? So bears are omnivores, they might eat both. Some bears are pickier eaters. Sloth bears and sun bears eat mostly insects, especially termites and ants. All bears are considered carnivores, but pandas and Andean bears prefer to eat mostly plants. Pandas dine on just one type of plant, bamboo. Andean bears chow down on fruits and palms and will even munch on corn in a farmer's field. So this Andean bear in Ecuador is eating a grassy plant. And here's a really neat picture. This is an adult human about 5.8 feet tall. So this is like maybe dad standing at home, and you can see the heights of the bears, but they're on all fours. So if they were standing up on just their 2 hind legs, imagine how tall they would be. Bears need a lot of food to fuel their big bodies. Some are much heavier than humans. Polar bears weigh up to 1,800 pounds. Sun bears are tiny in comparison. They weigh up to 150 pounds. The sizes of all other bears fall in between. Let's see how bears compare. So you can see the polar bear, if he's on all fours, he can be up to 5 feet. So if we put him on all hind legs, he could be almost double that, like 10 feet tall. Holy moly. The brown bear, 4 feet, black bear, 3 feet, and the sun bear, 2.3 feet when they're on all fours. That's how tall they are. A carnivore, we know, eats mostly meat. Some can eat plants if they need to. So if they're really, really hungry and there's not meat around, a carnivore might eat berries or some sort of plant to hold them over. Baby bears, page 16. When bear cubs are born, mother bears have a big job. Newborn bears are helpless and tiny. They are blind and have almost no hair. Mother bears give the cubs everything they need. They keep the cubs warm and make sure they're safe and well fed. Bears are mammals, so cubs drink milk from their mothers. The cubs grow and put on weight fast. So you can see here, really tiny. It's a giant panda holding her 2-week-old baby cub. Newborn panda cubs are the same size and weight as a stick of butter. Super, super tiny when they're first born. And a mammal. This is a new vocabulary word. We haven't seen mammals yet. We had cheetahs, but the word mammal I don't think was in that book. An animal that produces milk to feed its young. Mammals usually have hair or fur covering their skin. And you can see this polar bear mother and her 3 cubs. Page 18. In colder areas, mothers give birth to cubs in a den. Cubs are often born in January or February. The cubs leave the den in March or April when they are big enough to travel. Cubs can't wait to get outside. A scientist once described a polar bear milk as tasting like chalky, fishy cream. Not sounding very good. So this one, you can see these 3 little cubs. This is the first time out of their den. They look so happy. And a den is a shelter for a wild animal. Bear dens can be a hole in a hillside, a cave, or a burrow in a snowpack. All bear cubs love to goof around. They tumble, chew, and even swat at a brother or sister. This helps them practice skills they need to survive. Bear cubs stay with their mother for 1 to 3 years. She teaches them everything she knows about how to live in the wild. Then the cubs are ready to live on their own. So if you think back to our cheetah, also a mammal, that's very similar. Cheetahs stay with their mom for the first 2 years where they play with their siblings, they learn how to hunt, and that's really the same for the bears. They stay with their mom for 1 to 3 years, they learn how to hunt and how to care for themselves, and then the mom goes off on their own. 6 cool facts about bears. A polar bear's hair is not really white. It just appears that way because each hair is clear and hollow. Number 2, the biggest bear to ever live was the giant short-faced bear, almost as tall as an elephant. This prehistoric bear died out between 500,000 and 2 million years ago. Number 3, sloth bears have no front teeth. They use their mouth like a vacuum to suction up insects. Number 4, white spirit bears look like polar bears, but they're actually a rare kind of black bear. Number 5, a bear's sense of smell is 7 times more powerful than a bloodhound dog's. And number 6, many bear species often give birth to twins. So they would have twins each time. All right. Page 22, super sleepers. When winter is coming, the temperature drops and food gets harder to find. What's a bear to do? Settle down for a long winter's nap, of course. Black bears and brown bears find a den and go into a sleep-like state for the winter. This is called hibernating. Not all bears hibernate. Bears that hibernate do it because there isn't enough food to survive the winter. For up to 7 months, they don't eat, drink, or even take a bathroom break. 7 months. To prepare for their long sleep, bears eat as much as they can in the fall. The extra fat gives their bodies energy to survive until spring. And you heard the word hibernate. To spend winter in a sleep-like state. This saves energy while there's little food available. So we know that around here, because we might have very snowy winters where the bears don't have the opportunity to hunt or there's no berries for them to forage for. So those bears go into hibernation and they can sleep for up to 7 whole months depending upon the type of winter they have. A bear's body. Bears have body parts with special abilities that allow them to stay healthy while they hibernate. Here are some cool features of a bear's body. Their heart. During hibernation, a bear's heart rate slows down. It goes from 60 beats per minute to only 6 beats per minute. That saves energy. In the spring, the heart rate returns to normal. Their bones are even special. If a person were to lie still for 6 months, his or her bones would break down. But this doesn't happen to bears. When bears hibernate, a chemical in their bodies prevents bone breakdown. When bears wake up, their skeletons are still strong. And their muscles. A hibernating bear doesn't move much for months. In people, this would lead to muscle loss and severe weakness, but a bear's muscles stay strong. I'm gonna pick up on 26. I'm just gonna let my puppy out real quick. Okay. Page 26. There's much we don't understand about hibernating bears. How do their muscles stay strong after not moving for months? How do bears stay healthy after gaining so much weight and then nearly starving? Scientists are studying bears to try to answer these questions. Their findings might also be useful for treating human diseases. So here's a weird fact. To fatten up before hibernating, bears may eat 20,000 calories or more a day. That's like eating more than 65 cheeseburgers in one day. 65 cheeseburgers in one day. It's remarkable. You can see here on page 26, that's a black bear mother and her cub hibernating. You do not ever want to come across a black bear cub and a mother hibernating. A mother bear is very, very protective of her babies, and we'll get to that in the book. Scientist Spotlight. David Garshlis risks life and limb by doing something many people consider crazy: entering a sleeping bear's den. Normally, no one should ever disturb bears and their cubs, but Garshlis knows how to study them safely. He has special training and years of experience. He gives the mother bear a drug to make her sleep soundly. Then he and his team weigh the bears and take blood samples. The information helps the scientists learn more about the bears and hibernation. Okay, so they do it safely. There is a way to do it, but super dangerous. Don't be fooled. These animals might sometimes be called bears, but they are not bears at all. Water bear. Unlike bears, these critters are so small you almost need a microscope to see them. Tardigrades are tiny creatures that live in moss and other wet places. And this one was very surprising, a koala bear. If you ever hear people refer to koalas as koala bears, feel free to politely correct them. A koala is a marsupial, a type of animal with a pouch. They live in Australia where there are no native bears. So koalas are actually not koala bears, okay? A koala is in the same family as a kangaroo, a marsupial. A bear cat. This critter has a face like a cat and a body like a bear, and a tail like a monkey. But binturongs are related to none of those animals. They're related to small mammals called civets. And the red panda. I love to see the red panda at the zoo. Red pandas and giant pandas share similar names and live in the same region. But giant pandas are bears, while red pandas are not. The two species share a common relative that lived millions of years ago, but they're not very alike today. So a red panda, not a bear. And a microscope is a tool for making very small objects and living things look bigger. That's how we can see those tiny, tiny bugs up close. Page 30. Bears in books. Bears have been popular characters in children's books for a long time. See how some beloved make-believe bears stack up against real-life bears. Here's Paddington. Paddington enjoys fishing with his family, just like grizzly bear cubs in Alaska, but probably doesn't wear a rain jacket and a hat. In the Jungle Book, Baloo eats termites and ants, his favorite treats, just like the real sloth bear. Very similar. And Winnie the Pooh. Pooh Bear will do anything for honey, just like some real live bears. Page 32, Bears and People. People have had a special relationship with bears for thousands of years. Bears appear in famous cave paintings done by prehistoric people in France 30,000 years ago. Many other cultures also have lived alongside bears for a very long time. A First Nations tribe in Canada has been teaming up with scientists to study bears. The tribe set up snares to snag bears' hair as they walked by. Scientists checked the DNA in the hair. They learned that a lot of bears go through the region to reach fish on the coast. Even the tribe didn't know so many bears traveled through the area. So you can see they have barbed wire here, and as the bears walk by, it traps some of their hair. And that's how they can get their DNA to see what bears are traveling through without actually hurting them. It's easy to be in a place where bears live and have no idea that bears are there. That's because bears are good at avoiding people. With their powerful sense of smell, they know you're around long before you can see them. Too close for comfort. If you're ever face to face with a bear, don't panic and don't try to run. Bears can run much faster than you. Instead, lower your eyes and back away in the direction you came from. A bear is likely to lose interest and walk away. Bear attacks are extremely rare. A person would be more likely to get struck by lightning, and that's not very likely either, than to be attacked by a bear. Still, it's important to practice good bear manners when you're in bear country. The most important rule, never leave food lying around. Hang food between trees at campsites. Use bear-proof garbage cans. If you spot a bear, keep your distance. Bears are aggressive only when they see you as a threat. And that generally happens when their babies are around, or if you become in between the mommy and the baby bear. Years ago, hunters often killed bears for their fur and meat. In some areas, bears were hunted until they nearly died out. Brown bears once lived all over western North America and into northern Mexico, but by the late 1800s, overhunting had wiped out most of them. In Russia and parts of Asia, moon bear numbers may have dropped by half in the last 30 years. Overhunting is a major factor. But there's hope for bears. In many parts of the world, laws protect endangered bears. Some places have rules that limit bear hunting, and experts have been working to protect bear habitats. So the word endangered is a little bit different. Endangered means at risk of dying out. They're not extinct yet, but they're getting close. And the habitat is the place where the animal lives. The future for bears. Like many animal species, bears face threats to their future. Some bears, such as sloth and sun bears, struggle from poaching and habitat loss. As people clear forests to get wood to make farmland, bears have fewer places to live. And if you heard the word poaching, that means illegal hunting. It's not legal for these people to do it. And you can see here, this is a forest in Canada, and it's been cut down, and that's where a lot of the bears live. Okay? Polar bears have a different problem. Because the climate is changing and the world is getting warmer, they have less sea ice to hunt on. Scientists agree that humans are playing a large role in the warming trend. Scientists are studying polar bears to see how they are handling their changing homes. So normally polar bears, they wait on the ice for seals or walruses to pop up to get oxygen, and that's when they strike. But if there's not as much ice anymore, then they don't have as much opportunity for their hunting. For pandas, the problem is that only 1,600 remain in the wild. Pandas have the fewest numbers. At the Wulong Panda Reserve in China, a keeper slips into a panda suit. He disguises his scent. He's making sure the young panda cubs don't get used to humans, as he teaches them how to survive in the wild. So you can see in this picture, that's not a real panda, the big one. That's a person dressed like a panda. But he has to teach these babies how to hunt in the wild and how to survive because there's so few left. But he doesn't want that baby panda to see him as a human and smell him as a human and think that humans are okay and they're gonna feed him, because that would be very dangerous for that baby. The keeper and others want to boost panda numbers, but they're not the only ones working to help bears. In Churchill, Canada, bears sometimes wander too close to town. In the past, such bears would have been killed, but now workers return these bears safely to the wild. And here you can see baby panda triplets. In 2014, the world celebrated a very special birth. Panda triplets were born at a safari park in China. It's rare for a panda to have triplets. Even more special, all three survived. It's a Chinese tradition to name babies when they are 100 days old. So when the cubs turned 100 days old, they were given names in a special ceremony. Meet Meng Meng, which means cute, Cuckoo, which means cool, and Shuai Shuai, which means handsome. Page 42. If it's up to us to make the world a place where bears and people can live together, there's so much you can do to help bears around the world. Here's a few ideas. Learn all you can about bears. Books, magazines, and films are great sources. Visit your local library to find out more. Go green. Fighting climate change helps all bears. Saving energy by turning off electronics when you don't need them, walking and riding your bike, planting a tree. Tell the bear story. Create bear-related art or stage a play. You can sell tickets to your show. Later, donate the money to animal welfare groups that work to protect bears. So when they say riding bikes, that means riding bikes instead of traveling in your car, going on a city bus. That can help save energy. And then there's a quiz, which maybe we'll talk about tomorrow. And the glossary. So we knew that the Bear book is a level 3 reader, so it had more definitions. It also had more sidebars and our little sidebar definitions here as well. So as you're reading, those sidebars are not the exact same part of a story in a nonfiction text, but it's something that goes along with that page, with that piece. So that's why we want to read it as we're going to make sure that that part of the story makes sense for us. So here's our bear book and our lizard book. What do you think, guys? What was your favorite animal that we talked about? Turtles, bears, lizards, cheetahs. I'm gonna say my favorite was probably the cheetahs. I like the cheetahs so much. Zuri, what do you think your favorite was? Sea turtles, cheetahs, lizards, or bears?
Yes, cheetahs.
Yeah, cheetahs. Cool. All right, so next we're gonna switch over. I just wanted to point out some of my because tomorrow we're doing our rock painting. So here's my little lizard. And we know a lizard's different than like a snake or some other animals because a lizard has an eyelid. So you can see his eyelid, he's actually able to blink, okay? Lizards have tails that are able to regenerate, some of them, not all of them. So if a predator comes and attacks this lizard and bites his tail off, he might be able to regrow it. A lizard has an ear where they can hear from. It's not an ear like ours, sometimes it's just a hole in the side of their head. And we know that a legless lizard has an ear and an eyelid, which helps you know the difference between the legless lizard and a snake. And lastly, an eye, which goes under the eyelid. So those are our body parts for our lizard, and we'll be painting tomorrow. Alrighty, so bears and lizards. What a super fun day. Now today, for math, we're going to talk a little bit about cutting up things like sandwiches or paper or fabric into parts. Make sure you can see it. So here I have 2 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, kind of like squares, and I want to cut them into fourths because I want littler pieces. I don't want to eat the whole thing in one fell swoop. So if I wanted to cut these 2 peanut butter and jellies into fourths, but I didn't want to cut them the same, let's say I wanted to cut them for my twins and I don't want them to be exactly the same. They hate when they get everything the same. So one way I can do it is on a diagonal. And if it's a square and I cut it on a diagonal, those 4 triangle pieces are equal fourths. But I can also cut it like a cross. So I have inside my big square 4 little squares now. So even though here I have triangles and here I have squares, I still have 4 fourths of my 2 sandwiches. The 2 sandwiches aren't any bigger or smaller, so each of those pieces is the same size. It's just cut into different size fractions. Here I have 2 pieces of paper being cut into halves. Let's say I'm doing a craft project and I need to cut them into halves. Same thing, I can do it in 2 ways. I can make triangles and cut them on a diagonal. Okay, there's 2 halves. But I can also cut them straight up and down. Or if you want, straight side to side. Now what you know is if you have 2 squares that start off the same and you cut them both into halves, this triangle half and this rectangle half, they're the same size because they're both half of the same starting square. So just because you have starting squares and you want to make halves doesn't mean your halves have to be the same as somebody else's. Halves can still be different looking, okay, but the same size. And lastly, let's say I'm making crafts and I want to use, maybe I'm making masks, okay? So I'm using fabric and I want 2 pieces of fabric and I want them into thirds, which means 3. So I could do one this way, straight up and down. But this one, I could also go across. Now the tricky thing about thirds is I can't exactly cut them into the triangles if it's a rectangle because it won't be exact. So the size of your pieces, when you're talking about fractions, they all have to be the same. Remember yesterday we talked about whether it's a fraction or if it's not a fraction. The pieces have to be the same size if it is broken up into equivalent pieces. Equivalent means equal, okay? All right, so these are our fractions for the day, halves, fourths, and thirds again. And tomorrow, we're going to just kind of review a little bit of our math that we've done together for the last 3 weeks. And like that. After we do our review, we're gonna talk a little bit about our animals. I'm trying really, really hard to get a snake for tomorrow's video. I just have to try to get my 16-year-old to wake up before 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which seems to be silly this summer. So we're going to try to do that, and then we're going to do some painting, and we're going to celebrate our last day for summer program because tomorrow's it. Tomorrow's our last one, and I'm super excited. And then you guys will have, let's see, tomorrow's our last day, 1, 2, 3. You'll have 4 weeks off, and then school starts again. So you'll have 4 weeks to maybe paint more rocks or do other fun stuff. You have all that mindfulness materials, all those different things in your bags that you can also do for those 4 weeks. So lots of super fun things you can do for the next 4 weeks while you have some time off, or even go on a vacation if you can and do it safely before you come back for 3rd grade. Dun, dun, dun. All right, does anybody have questions for today? Easy peasy day. All right, friends, I hope everybody was safe yesterday after the big storms, and I will see you tomorrow with your paints for our very last day. Bye, guys.